On This Week in Enterprise Tech, the Department of Justice thinks it's time to start blaming someone for letting those fraudulent robocalls happen. They have their targets painted. Now, Curtis and I discuss what that means for companies and organizations. Now, international tensions are high. Now, Curtis takes us through what that means for cybersecurity and your business. Digital transformations are sometimes hard, and finding the right solutions that meet your organization's needs are even harder. Now, Curtis and I talk with a great guest, Daniel Sachs, CEO of AppDirect, about bridging the divide and connecting your organization to the right solution. It's Wyatt on the set. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you from LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Wyatt. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 378, recorded January 31st, 2020. Connect the engine to the steering wheel. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by PlexTrack. PlexTrack has finally solved the pain of security assessment reporting. Try PlexTrack free for 1 month, either on-prem or in the cloud, with no contracts or risks. Go to plextrack.com/twit to claim your free month today. And by Zapier. Zapier connects all of your business software and handles the work for you so you can focus on what matters most. Right now, it's for the end of the month. Go to zapier.com/enterprise for your free 14-day trial. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and up to 6 times faster with no hidden fees for egress or API requests. Calculate your savings and try Wasabi with free unlimited storage for a month at wasabi.com, code ENTERPRISE. Welcome to Wyatt, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that's dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise, but I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in a professional, an expert in their field, and our favorite enterprise and security journalist, our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, it's always great to have you here, sir. Welcome back.
It is great to be here, Lou. Always a great day when I can be here on Wyatt. It's been a busy week in the security world, another busy one coming up. So it's good to sit back, take a moment, pause, and reflect about all the great enterprise information we can bring to people here on Wyatt.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I was just going to say that. We had a very busy week in the enterprise. In fact, you may remember those elaborate fraudulent robocalls and those scammers actually impersonated the IRS, Microsoft, and other organizations. Well, the Department of Justice thinks it's time to actually start putting a target on those and what actually caused those and maybe hold someone responsible for that. And we'll actually discuss that. Curtis and I will go through that. Especially, there's another topic that we have to talk about is international tensions. They're flaring, they're actually building up. But what does that mean for your business and when it comes to actually cyber risk? Well, Curtis is going to take you through that as well. Plus, we have a really great guest, Daniel Sachs, co-CEO of AppDirect, to talk about digital transformations and how customers need to be better connected to get the right solutions. But first, this is a pretty big week for enterprise news. So let's go ahead and get started with the show with our normal news from the week with this week's Blips. Now, when you hear about patent lawsuits, you normally think either blue chip companies or tech companies are out for blood, or maybe patent trolls are looking for a quick buck. Well, this time it's all about academics and how researchers did the work to develop something, patent it, but then find out somebody stole it. Now, this time, it wasn't just anyone who stole it. It was Apple and Broadcom. That's right. Back in 2012, Caltech accused Apple of using Broadcom Wi-Fi chips that infringed on 4 of their patents in all. That's right. All iPhones starting in 2012 were sold with this. Now, the case actually hit the courts in 2016, but it looks like the verdict has just come through. And who came out on top? when the dust settles? Well, Caltech, of course. The jury ordered Apple alone to pay $838 million, or about $1.40 per device, which is around 590 million of them. Along with Apple's fine, Broadcom was also hit with a fine totaling about $270.2 million for a total of $1.1 billion in sweet, sweet redemption. Now, I do think it's a bit odd that who actually stole the actual company that stole the tech didn't actually got the less of the fine, but that's a topic for another discussion. Now, what is this mystery technology the company actually stole? Well, according to the inventor, the tech is a subsystem to the 802.11n and 802.11ac Wi-Fi standards relating directly to transmitting data efficiently. Now, in a statement from Caltech, they call out their reasoning for the suit since they are, quote, a nonprofit institution of higher education and is committed to protecting its intellectual property in furtherance of its mission to expand human knowledge and benefit society through research and integrity with education. I think that's pretty noble. Noble or not, they won the battle and may also be walking happily to the bank. It might also make companies think twice about stealing from academia in the future.
Well, we're still tallying up the numbers from 2019, but one thing we know, Android malware, especially the malware having to do with fake ad sites, really spiked in 2019. Mobile security vendor Upstream this week said that in 2019 it identified as many as 98,000 malicious Android apps and 43 million infected Android devices across 20 countries. The numbers are up sharply from 2018 when Upstream recorded some 63,000 apps and 30 million infected devices. Now, 32% of the top 100 most active malicious Android apps that Upstream blocked in 2019 were available for download on Google's Google Play mobile app stores, and many of them are still there. More than 9 out of 10, or 1.6 billion of the 1.71 billion mobile transactions that Upstream's security platform processed last year, were blocked for being fraudulent. The company says that if those transactions had been allowed, the total cost to end users in fraudulent charges would have topped $2.1 billion. While detecting malicious mobile apps can be difficult, there are often some indicators, the company says, like a constantly drained battery, an overheated device, or high data charges. Now, while user ratings and reviews are also sometimes a good indicator of an app's quality, it's not always the case. Most of the downloaded malicious Android apps, for instance, had good reviews and high ratings, but only because someone had gone through and done carpet bombing of fake reviews.
Now, antivirus utilities have always been sold to consumers and organizations as something they should trust to keep their assets and data safe and private. However, it also brings up the question whether security-based technology straddles the boundary of also violating your privacy as well. Well, one such company is in the hot seat about this topic, and it's Avast. Now, in 2015, Avast started Jumpshot, which is in order to actually extend their data analytics beyond just core security. They actually developed this company. Now, supposedly, this is to help wrangle big data, but fast forward to this past December, when Avast was actually accused by a creator of AdBlock Plus, or AdBlock extension of both Firefox and Mozilla, of harvesting and snooping on user data browser history. Now, Mozilla and Firefox removed the 4 extensions as Avast Online Security, AVG Online Security, Avast Safe Price, and AVG Safe Price. Now, but the past week, there's actually more information coming up, and Avast actually also revealed that the Czech-based cybersecurity specialist was also cultivating another more controversial revenue stream. That's right. They've been harvesting and selling your data, some of which is actually gathered by way of their security tools. Now, to help cleanse themselves of their sins, Avast has announced that it will be winding down Jumpshot, which is its $180 million marketing technology subsidiary that had been in the business of collecting from across the web, including within walled gardens, analyzing it, and then secretly selling it to third-party companies and customers and tech giants. Now, this seems like a way for their new CEO to distance himself of past corporate sins and for a way to save face and move on. Now, I don't know about you, but it does pose an even bigger question. If we trust apps and services to scan all of our files, do we also trust them that they're going to be responsible with the data that they get from it? Think about it.
Well, last week, there was a major ICS hacking contest, and there were plenty of lessons whether you were there or not. A 3-day contest held during the S4 by 20 ICS conference placed ICS products in the hacker hot seat down in South Beach. That there were mostly successful hacks in the 25 entries by 8 teams of hackers in the contest should come as no surprise, given the still nascent state of security in ICS, or Industrial Control Systems. Trend Micro's zero-day initiative, which sponsors the renowned Pwn2Own contest, shelled out $280,000 in total in prize money to the successful hacking teams. The engineering teams of at least 3 ICS vendors tried to participate in the ICS Pwn2Own contest, where ZDI pays bounties to the researchers for the bugs, but the teams were thwarted by their own internal legal departments. As a matter of fact, only one ICS vendor, Rockwell Automation, voluntarily participated in this first ever ICS contest in Miami last week. Now, many of the vulnerabilities that were used in the working exploits were the same found in any software program, things like memory corruption and deserialization. As with other Pwn2Own contests, the contestants had a few months with the targets before the actual event to find the flaws and create the attack exploits they launched during the live contest. It must be said that the Pwn2Own bug bounty payoffs in the contest are minuscule compared with underground markets. Nevertheless, given that most ICS systems are relatively easy to exploit, attackers are much less likely to bother burning a zero-day when, frankly, they can just exploit a known Windows vulnerability.
Now, most people get Ring doorbell to surveil their property for porch pirates or eventual thieves, but what if it caught a crime in the act? Could they use the footage maybe used in a court case to actually convict the criminal? Well, maybe the video could be, but according to some states, the audio can't. Now, New Hampshire is one of 12 states that require all parties in a conversation to consent to an audio recording. And while police have been eager to use video footage for private Ring cameras, urged on by Amazon-owned companies' aggressive marketing, and national criminal defense and civil liberties experts say that the audio recordings pass into an untested and concerning legal territory. Now, during a recent trial about a shooting, the prosecutor asked a judge to accept audio recordings of the incident captured by a neighbor's Ring camera as evidence. Now, however, the public defender opposed this motion, arguing that the recordings from the home surveillance cameras, like Ring, violate the state's wiretapping law, which makes it a felony to actually audio record someone without their knowledge or consent. Now, the judge hasn't yet to actually deny that motion, but it doesn't actually look good here. Now, in a previous case dealing with the recording public officials, particularly police performing public duties, judges have ruled that recordings are legal. Now, the question of third-party audio recordings of unknowing private individuals has yet to be answered, though. Now, most states have wiretapping laws, and they're based on federal statute, but they differ between requiring one party consent, where only one member of conversation must consent to the recording, and two-party, also known as all-party consent. Now, in Pennsylvania, a two-party consent state, the Philadelphia District Courts and Attorney's Office considers audio recordings from Ring and other outdoor home surveillance devices actually admissible evidence. Now, in Michigan, a two-party consent state, in order to violate the state's wiretapping law, persons must willfully intercept the communication. So I'm not sure I actually understand that one, but we'll see. Now, so basically, what are we saying here? If you leave it up to the states, they will intercept and interpret the law a little differently. Now, what it does prove is with any technology, you might be surprised without the law needs to bend, how much the law needs to bend or not bend to make it useful. Well, folks, that does it for the Blips. But next up, the Bytes. But before we get there, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's PlexTrack. When it comes to security assessments, I think we can all agree on one thing: reporting stinks. Now, PlexTrack's founder, Dan DeClaus, is a 15-year veteran of cybersecurity. He holds both a CISSP and an OSCP license. And with much of his time spent in application penetration testing, Dan actually decided to build his own solution. He called it PlexTrack. Now, PlexTrack has since raised venture capital, employs over a dozen employees, and boasts Fortune 500 companies as its clients. Now, what can PlexTrack do for you and your organization? Well, PlexTrack is the purple teaming platform that provides rapid reporting for both red teams, as well as tracking and remediation and attestation for blue teams as well. Now, bring those security teams together without the need to actually physically sit together through a central interface. PlexTrack gives red teams the ability to report issues, and blue teams are able to remediate them right away. Now, red teams can actually both import findings from numerous scanners. They can include screenshots and videos with auto formatting. They can also customize Word and PDF exports with current templates and streamline reviews with intuitive web-based readouts. Now, blue teams actually have even more advantage here because they can actually customize an internal and external assessment questionnaires. They also have customized findings with task management tools integrated with things like Jira Cloud. Now, you can also assign findings to team members and track status over time, plus provide attestation of security posture with robust analytics. Now, PlexTrack improves the entire security engagement lifecycle by making it easy to generate security reports, deliver them securely, and also track the issues to completion straight from one platform. Now, PlexTrack is the solution for enabling the Purple Team process and can be launched in 10 minutes. Now, you can try PlexTrack for free for 1 month, either on-prem or in the cloud with no contracts or risks. Simply go to plextrack.com/twit to claim your free month. That's PlexTrack, plextrac.com/twit. And we thank PlexTrack for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for the bytes. Now, you may remember those elaborate, fraudulent robocalls where scammers actually impersonated whether the IRS, Microsoft, and other large organizations. Well, the Department of Justice thinks it's time to start blaming someone for letting those calls happen, and they have their targets painted. Now, as you know, fraudulent robocalls are a serious problem here in the United States, and people, whether they're saying they're the IRS and that they need to pay fees or back taxes, or maybe targeting the elderly, or maybe someone who has a really good online presence, and they're impersonating someone who is supporting a large reputable corporation to essentially squeeze money out of them, almost like ransomware-like. They pretend to be the Social Security Administration and inform victims that they have their Social Security number has been stolen or suspended, and they need to reclaim it by paying a fee. They even claim that maybe a relative is sick and it needs fast cash. Well, the question is, can you fully blame the scam artists here, or the technology and the services they use to carry it out? That's a big question here. Think about that for a second, because according to the DOJ, you can definitely hold the services accountable. Interesting. And they want a New York federal judge to cut off the company's access to the U.S. telephone network. Now, in one case, they actually had issued a restraining order against one of the companies. Now, this particular example is interesting. Over a 23-day period in May and June in 2019, defendant tollfreedeals.com connected 720 million calls to U.S. numbers. Now, the DOJ says that 425 million of those calls actually lasted for only a second or less, suggesting that many were unwanted or hung up on. Now, in fact, during those 2 months, Toll-Free Deals connected 182 million calls from a single India-based call center. Now, of these calls, more than 90% appeared to come from 1,000 source numbers. Now, one of those numbers, more than 80% have been associated with the fraudulent robocalls. Now, these VoIP-based gateways between foreign call centers and the U.S. telephone network are being used to scale out the effort and mask the calls. Now, the feds don't allege that U.S. telecom providers are directly executing on these frauds. However, they say that the providers turned a blind eye. That's a big key here. They turned a blind eye to this rampant criminal activity occurring on their networks. Now, over a period of years, the companies received numerous warnings from other telecom providers that their services were being used for fraudulent use. Now, federal officials say they did as little as they could to stop the activity while the scammers continued to operate. All right. I want to first throw this out to you, the audience. Think about this for a second as we walk through this discussion. Now, feel free to tweet me or check out at twit.community and send a message. What do you think? Should services be held accountable here, or should it be only the scam artists? To put it in context, let me give you another example. Let's say somebody carries out 100,000 ransomware attacks across the country. Now, they're using AT&T Internet to do that. And over time, the feds actually warn AT&T about the actual fraudulent activity, and they do nothing. Should AT&T be held accountable for all the ransomware attacks, or should it be the actual people that actually performed the attacks? All right, all right, Curtis, I want to throw this to you first. What do you think? I want to throw that same question to you. Who should be held accountable here?
Well, I think the primary responsibility and accountability definitely has to go to the fraudulent actors. No question about that. But I think in a case like these networks where they are profiting from criminal activity, it's not unreasonable to say that they bear some responsibility. Now, the question that is reasonable is how much responsibility and how much should they be fined or punished for that responsibility. I will leave that to others. But I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to hold them responsible. The way that they're operating now is under basically a common carrier exclusion for things like this. It's the same reason so many online forums are reluctant to moderate comments, because years ago, decades ago, the FCC promulgated a rule that said essentially, if all you do is carry information, so if you are just the pipe, then you don't bear any responsibility for what that information is. It's one that the telephone companies have used, ISPs have used, and they found that everything from CompuServe in the old days to modern fora for comments, if they didn't moderate, in other words, if they didn't touch it at all, then they didn't bear any responsibility. It let people get away with 4chan-like behavior without any consequences, because the owners of those forums were reluctant to do anything, because the FCC had found that if you moderate at all, then you're responsible for any of the content. And it sounds like what Pi and the rest of the FCC is coming down on is saying that there's a gray area in there, that you don't have to actively moderate. You don't have to take an active role in the criminal activity going on over your network to be held at least partially responsible for that activity. And it brings us into some interesting territory, because this is almost the definition case for a slippery slope. If you're a little bit responsible, how responsible are you? If you're responsible for scam calls, are you also responsible for hate speech? These are the sorts of things that will come up as this goes along, and I'm not at all sure we have any reasonable answers for them.
I agree. I think the interesting thing here is whether they should be held accountable. Is that you're right? I think that they should at least be fined or have a continual infraction that causes them to, maybe not handle the one-off cases, but handle the continual cases. I kind of relate this a little bit to similarly to DMC takedown notices. A lot of times there's, people downloading movie content that's copyrighted, and eventually they get notices in the mail, and those notices usually come from the content providers, and they usually contact the ISPs and say, hey, you need to find out who this customer is, because they continue to download our stuff. And if they don't do it, if they don't actually create these notices or maybe even take those customers offline, they get fined, they get penalties, and they're huge penalties, they're big ones. And so they're so afraid of not dealing with that they actually go and have their own terms of service and other things that go along with it. So I definitely see that this could potentially become something like that. Especially as you see more and more of these types of attacks come through, especially using older technology. So the interesting thing here is most of these scammers they're in small outfits, right? They're in basements, apartments all over the world. It just kind of proves out that technology is really making it easier to kind of take advantage of older technologies via gateways like telephone services and so on. Curtis, I want to throw this back to you. What do you think the industry can do here to start protecting its customers and organizations more, especially when it comes to new technology, bridging old technology?
Well, it's going to be difficult. You and I both know that when it comes, you made an analogy in your initial comments between this and some of the attacks that take place via email. And as we know, there are things like whitelists and blacklists of known good, known bad DNS addresses. The telcos must have a similar sort of list. They know that there are particular country codes, area codes, where there are particular likelihood of scam calls. And I think what we'll see is a growing pressure to block at the telco level calls from those particular country and local codes. I suspect that if it doesn't already exist, and I will say now I am not an expert in current telco industry. But if it doesn't already exist, I think we'll probably see some services similar to the whitelist and blacklist services that we now see for DNS address blocks that take action against these known bad numbers. Now, if there are innocent numbers caught up in that, well, I think what that does is make it incumbent upon people in those areas to bring pressure on the local targets to shut down their business. It's fascinating. Years and years ago, when we were first setting up our household, we would go and look at houses, and once in a while, you would find a house that was just a standard suburban house, but it had, for some reason or another, 40 phone lines being brought in. And back in the 80s, it was generally assumed that what you had then was an illegal betting operation. You know, bookies would do this, get a house, and run a bunch of phone lines. Today, you don't have to have all of those lines. You can use VoIP. You can have a single solid broadband connection and send out millions of these calls. The cost of entry is low, and you don't have to have a high hit rate to make it insanely profitable. What we really need, and what I think the regulators are trying to do, is disrupt the profit model. And if they can do that, then it might just make telephone calls useful again and all of our pockets just a little bit quieter.
Right. Well, we do know that there's actually some new services that are coming out that are starting to prevent this. And some of these telco companies are actually distributing these services to help block these things. And so hopefully these types of scares that come with fines and other regulations will also come with some additional innovation to help protect us. But we'll have to see. Well, folks, that does for that bite. We do want to get it on the next bite because Curt has a really great topic here. We know that international tensions are flaring across the world, but what does that mean for your business when it comes to cyber risk? Curtis?
Well, not long ago, the attention on security issues shifted from phishing and Trojans and ransomware to things that go boom in the night. And that tends to get a lot of attention from, well, pretty much everyone. The thing is, this escalation in tension from the cyber world to the real world doesn't mark a huge change for cybersecurity. What it does do, though, is mark a huge change in how much attention people are paying to it. I spoke to a number of people a couple of weeks ago, and one of them, Elad Ben Meir, who's CEO of a company called Skada Fence, said, in the cyber world, there are these wars going on all the time. He said there are attempts at nation-state-backed attacks happening literally every minute of every day. Now, the CEO of SAP's NS2 group, which is SAP's large enterprise security group, Mark Testoni, said that 3 players, Iran, China, North Korea, are always engaged, along with many smaller actors. He said that they're always poking and probing to see where opportunities might be available and what kind of data might be visible. And this marks a huge change in the kind of Cold War activity many of us remember from our younger days. There were real battlefields, much of them going on in proxy nations, but they tended not to have an impact on those of us who were in the major player states. Aside from things like the duck and cover drills that were so famous back in the 50s and 60s, most of us in the U.S. didn't see an immediate impact from nation-state activity. Today, with the cyber battlefield, that is changing in a significant way. Now, nation-state attacks tend to be quite specific. And one of the differences between nation-state attacks and criminal attacks is that criminal attacks tend to focus on either money or things that can be quickly monetized, where the nation-state attacks, with one notable exception, tend to be focused on information and political action. For example, it's been very widely reported that Russia is interested in having political impact on the countries it targets. North Korea, on the other hand, does tend to look for the opportunities to get hard currency because the various sorts of embargoes make it difficult for them to do that. Iran, they tend to want to look out for what their critics are doing. You see a lot of activity in travel sites, in hospitality sites, looking for the locations and travel plans of dissidents. And they're also not above throwing the occasional chaos bomb just to see how busy they can keep the people who they see as their opponents. Now, what did these experts say? They said that in many cases, we need to look away from the traditional desktop systems and server systems to the IoT. Why? Two reasons. One of them is that the IoT can have an impact that is disproportionate to the number of systems on a particular network. If, for example, a company has a shop floor, has a chemical process, has, well, part of a critical infrastructure, whether it be power generation or energy distribution, doing something that has an impact on that flow of product or service can have an amazing impact, far greater than, say, simple ransomware might have. The other reason that these are popular targets is that it has to be said that the security of these IoT devices haven't reached nearly the level of maturity and sophistication that we've seen in the models and products for security in the IT world. And there have been all kinds of examples about this going all the way back into the last decade. One of the people I talked to pointed to a 2012 attack against Saudi Aramco, which absolutely devastated the petroleum production of Saudi Aramco and took well more than half a year to respond to. There are all kinds of these attacks, and there are all kinds of ways to respond. One of the things that's critical, though, is that all of the people I talked to said that the response needs to shift from the day-to-day security analysts and managers all the way up to the C-suite. As a matter of fact, SAP NS2's Testoni said that many of the conversations he has these days are with members of the C-suite, chief officers of one form or another, who want to know what their responsibility is, what their culpability might be if they don't respond, and just what the risk-reward balance is. Now, this is just the same as in the physical world, where companies are going to have to look at the risk and reward and decide where the equation leaves their organization. It's one of those things I'm curious for our listeners. Do you have these international threats as part of your threat model? What do you do about it? How do you incorporate it into your risk model? We would love to know. So let us know over in the chat room or via email. We'll give you that address in just a bit. But before we hear from our audience, Lou, I'd like to ask you, when you're thinking about criminals and attackers, do you tend to think first of criminals or nation-state actors?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, me personally, in some of the work I've done is, nation states can sometimes be more damaging, right? Because they're going to use your data to move markets, change elections, and so on. And so that they're going to try harder to gain more access, more data, and more widespread use data to do that. And so, we tend to be, I tend to be more alert when it comes to those types of things, especially when the tensions are flaring in different countries. And, we know that traffic might be flowing from specific nodes and from specific areas. And so we definitely pay more attention there. But again, criminals are always looking to make that quick buck, right? Or cause chaos. They are the ones that usually find the loopholes or, use more social engineering tactics to attack a target that's smaller, that they can then get access to, either large sums of data that they can sell or they can just use that data to kind of attack or ransomware the company that they're attacking. And so, again, it's a different front, a different type of attack, but you still have to be alert for those types of things as well. I think, whether one's more dangerous than the other. I mean, like you said, somebody can put a ticking time bomb on your network by just using a simple vulnerability like a password that has an admin access to a machine that can take down the network and do a lot more damage, which could eventually cause other things to happen, stock markets falling and so on. And so, it really just depends on the type of attack and how far that organization or person's willing to go to actually make it more elaborate. And again, so, sometimes I think nation states are a little bit more I would say risky from that perspective, but both of them are adversaries that we have to go up against for sure.
Well, when you're thinking about adversaries, one of the questions I have, especially when it comes to nation states, is the kind of risks that companies face, not really from being a target of a nation state actor, but being collateral damage. Now, we've seen this in a couple of cases where a nation state, or frankly, even a criminal, will launch an attack against a known specific target, and that attack will get away from them. All of a sudden, it goes out, hits a lot of people, and causes tremendous damage that they didn't really intend. But in the case of the nation state actors, it might be, a pleasant little side benefit to the work that they're doing. Lou, do you worry about this sort of collateral damage at all, or do you think that companies should just protect themselves from becoming targets of these nation states?
I think they have to worry both because, even if they looked out to protect themselves, but not necessarily their data, and there's downstream cascading effects to whether they're customers or other kind of things that go on, they have to risk the fact that they're going to lose people and organizations are going to lose trust in them, which then ultimately has even a bigger effect on their business. So you definitely have to kind of worry about both, right? You have to worry about, whether you're a hospital and you're doing patient data, you have to worry about, protecting your systems and your profit because you are, there's a profit farm there as well. But also protecting the patients that you have, because if the patients can't trust you, they're not going to come to your hospital. And I think that that's a big key factor here is you got to do things on both sides. You got to make sure that you're protecting your systems, your backends, your services, and your network. But also know that you have to be protecting those data and the data when the customers are interacting with their data and understanding their data and so on and so forth. So I think you kind of have to do both to guarantee you maintain that trust barrier for sure.
There's a lot to do to maintain the trust, and I think we can be fairly confident that there are going to be a continuing supply of these attacks coming from the different nation states, both for large events that are going on, like the Summer Olympics later this year, and just the normal day-to-day statecraft that everyone's involved with. We'll talk about it later, but now I think we've got a great guest coming up. And Lou, I can't wait to have you introduce them after what I suspect is another great ad.
Thanks a lot, Curtis. Yes, absolutely. It's soon my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on our Twilight right here. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Zapier. Now, growing a business is hard, right? Well, especially when you're wasting hours every day moving from data from emails to spreadsheets to your CRM to wherever. Shouldn't that just happen? Shouldn't it just work? Well, Zapier can help you here. The easiest way to automate your work. It connects all your business software and it handles work for you so you can actually focus on the things that matter. No more wasting your time on tasks that you know that could be automated, because that's exactly what Zapier was built to do. Just go to our special link right now, zapier.com/enterprise. Connect the apps you're using most and let Zapier take it from there. Now listen, they can do a whole bunch of things. Listen to what some of the things they can do. They can instantly engage with leads, send them to CRM or spreadsheet. They then notify your team so they can act fast on every opportunity. And that's just scratching the surface what Zapier can do. Zapier supports more than 1,500 business applications, so the possibilities are virtually endless. Now, best of all, it's actually easy to build the exact solution you need in minutes without writing code or asking a developer for help. Now, join more than 4.5 million people who are saving an average of 40 hours per month by using Zapier. Now, I can tell you, integration software is great, but when you have the smarts that go along with Zapier, I've used this before, I can tell you, it can definitely make things easier. You get emails, you want to pipe it into your CRM system, this is definitely the way to go, and it's done without having to write a line of code. That's the key here. I've used this before. I can tell you, not having to write code, to be able to build your workflow in minutes, to be able to manipulate the data and put it in the place you need it is really a time saver. So I definitely suggest you go check out and use it. Right now through the end of the month, try Zapier for free by going to zapier.com/enterprise. That's zapier.com/enterprise for your free 14-day trial. Zapier.com/enterprise. And we thank Zapier for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, that brings us to my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the Twiat Riot. Today we have co-CEO of AppDirect, Daniel Sachs. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thanks, Lou. Good to see you.
Now, Daniel, like we do in all of our shows, our audience loves to hear origin stories, people's kind of journey through tech. Can you maybe take us through your journey and how you ended up at AppDirect?
Yeah, sounds great. So I grew up in Niagara Falls, Canada, and my family actually had generations of being in the furniture business. So my great-great-grandparents started a furniture store on Main Street called Sachs Furniture. And my dad was in the store, my grandparents, and that was really part of our DNA. However, in 2009, after over 100 years in the business, we had to shut down the store at the height of the Great Recession. And that was a story that was very similar to many businesses on Main Street at the time. And I remember the pride that my family had really in being at the furniture store and how that was part of their identity and how excited they were about it. And in 2009, when the recession hit, I was really kind of marked by the fact that, is this the end of entrepreneurship? And our businesses on Main Street, like my family's, destined to fail based on larger companies that can compete based on access to technology. And right around the same time, I was visiting my friend who was in San Francisco at the time, Nicholas Desmarais, and we, coincidentally learned about SaaS. And as soon as we learned about the early days of cloud and software as a service, this was a time when the market in aggregate was less than $7 billion. Box, Dropbox, DocuSign were all in their Series A, B. We kind of learned about SaaS and said, wow, this would have saved our family's business. So how do we bring SaaS to the world? And over the last 10 years, we've really been focused on enabling businesses around the world to have access to best of breed digital services that allow them to run their business more effectively.
Fantastic. Well, we're definitely excited to have you here because you've had a very successful and inspiring entrepreneurship here, but two, because we can definitely hear a lot of people talking about digital transformation and how their business is very unique and it's really hard for them to kind of find the right solutions to kind of get them there and have guidance for that. It's a big problem. It's complex, and it's really hard for a business to figure out how they can do that and also scale at the same time. Can you maybe just take us to what you're seeing in the industry here and what are some companies doing to help it?
Definitely. So digital transformation can be really overwhelming because there's not a tangible action. And really, when I meet with different executives, I try to think, how do you distill digital transformation down into a few simple questions? And really, what I think it comes down to is as you evolve from an on-premise to a digital world or online world, how do you answer two key questions? Really, the first is what digital products do you want to sell? And then the second is what digital channels do you want to sell them through? What are your go-to-markets? And if you can really answer that question, you can truly unlock your revenue potential. So on one hand, think about most businesses that may have, one or two products. They might be brick and mortar, they might be traditional software, but every service can become a digital service. So the first step is really envisioning how will my product that could be totally digitally disrupted and transformed, how will that work online? And, we have many examples. So one example of a digital product could be taking, box software and putting it in the cloud. That's a pretty simple and common story today. So instead of someone buying a license on a CD, you can subscribe to it on a recurring basis. However, we're finding that actually almost any product or service around the world can become digital. The way we really define that are the way that it's bought, transacted, sold, accessed, the way the security is wrapped around it, the way it's packaged in a recurring way. So our thesis is that any product can become a digital recurring product. And we have examples ranging from cars that are sold as a service that can be configured online. You can select, what you want to buy, and it's all digitally enabled. We have examples from, IoT products like Nest. You have professional services that are now being automated in a recurring world. So it's really thinking about how you can inventory what portfolio of services you might be able to sell, either services that you've built and developed or that you want to bundle with third-party services. And then really the second part, as I mentioned, is about these digital channels. So today there's more and more ways to sell or go to markets than ever before. You used to only be able to sell, let's say, in store or through Salesforce. Now, in addition to telesales, there's online stores, there's ad footprints online, there's media buys. We think that there's going to be a proliferation of app stores embedded onto devices. So there's just so many more ways that you can market and sell your product. But really, that's how we would define digital transformation: is how do you think through evolving your products to make them digital and enable them online, and then how do you access them or sell them through the channels available for you?
Yeah, I think this is interesting, super interesting concept, because a lot of businesses, I can kind of give an analog to this, is they're always looking for information on how to expand their business and how to make things easier, even just where to start sometimes. Like, for instance, very simple one is this past weekend, I was trying to hang a TV and route the cables and power through the wall. And I really had to search and kind of talk to a ton of people, to including installers, to say, hey, how do I do this? What tools do I need to do? What's the techniques I need to do it? And it's just a very analog example, but the truth of the matter is, I spent a bunch of time and energy trying to figure it out, and I might have just been better off paying somebody to guide me through the process. And so I think the truth of the matter is, businesses, if you scale this out to a business, they're saying, hey, I have this particular need, this particular to market kind of guidance, and I'm trying to find a way to do that and get myself from the on-premise world to the cloud, and I don't know what solutions can help me there. And this is just a curated way to help them. Is that right? Is it a place for them to go to pick and choose, or is it a place to go to actually guide them through the process?
Yeah, I mean, on your analogy there over the weekend of having to wire things and then figure out how to get things together from different vendors, I mean, it's hard for a business to get the access to the technology they need. And the way I look at that is, it's like, imagine going to your car dealership and saying, I ultimately want to drive. I want to drive fast. I want to get to my destination. And they're like, okay, great. Well, I have this thing called a steering wheel. And if you go across the street, I can introduce you to someone who can maybe potentially connect that to something called an engine. But then you have to figure out how the engine works together with the steering wheel, and it might not be compatible. And then, you're expected to build this whole car. And then even when it's together, all the pieces are changing and things don't work together. So really what we've tried to do is think about, how can a business really naturally and easily access and manage the services they need in a way that helps them achieve their ultimate objective, which is either typically to make more money or save costs. So what we've really focused on is looking at what are the elements that businesses need in order to use software more effectively, and how can we seamlessly enable that. So you gave the example during the ad of Zapier, an incredible product that makes it easier to connect your endpoints together. And there are also other elements like that, interconnectivity, things like passwords, security management, account management, data management. So you have to, for every time you have to use a service, you have to log into it separately. You have to pay for it separately. You forget your password. It's really not designed to work so efficiently. And even if you think about the act of what is an application? 30 years ago, when some of the first accounting applications were there, it was really about inputting data and then querying data back. And if you think about it, while technology's evolved in a tremendous degree, in many ways, the way we use our business applications is still the same. You have to open up your computer, click with your mouse. You have to open up, let's say, Salesforce for CRM. You then have to identify, what am I going to do? I want to create a lead. Then you have to create the lead. There's a lot of space and steps and mental energy needed in order to process really simple tasks. So a lot of what we try to do is streamline the way businesses not only procure and buy digital services, but also the way those services work together so businesses can get the outcomes they want faster. And really what that looks like is we've built the largest distribution network for digital recurring services, enabling almost 5 million businesses around the world to have access to SaaS and digital services through a network of app stores powered by big brands that you know around the world.
Now, this sounds a lot. I work with a lot of resellers, and I work with solution architects in the field, and it sounds a lot of like solution architects are kind of built for that. They're usually assigned to an account, and they kind of go out and they look at what an organization has, and then they obviously architect a solution for them, whether it's a process of moving data, securing data, it's making things faster, that kind of thing. How does this kind of relate to them? Is this going to make their lives a lot easier? Is this going to take their jobs? Like what is the kind of major goal here? Is it just to kind of bring them along for the ride?
Yeah. So we really had the fundamental premise when we started the business is that businesses want to buy software from people. And the human element in software distribution is really critical. So instead of building an Apple-like mobile app store where it's all about the consumer experience, we actually think in the business world, you need someone who knows your business, your industry to help fulfill that. So we actually have the largest network of agents and resellers and merchants that are able to help a business figure out what software they need. Now, the biggest shift when we go from on-premise software to digital software, though, is that what used to be the value add for a VAR, value-added service provider, or a solution architect, was potentially the install, shipping, fulfillment, the training, getting things set up, but that was all manual. So now it's not about like going in and installing. There might be some element of that is really critical, but it's moved to a world where in the digital world, business consumers should expect to be able to get the access to the service instantly. So therefore, APIs are the new value add, and therefore the traditional solution architect needs to be able to understand how to work with best of breed technology in order to integrate and make it work more effectively. So a lot of what we've done is created an API standard to wrap all the different services that a business would need, so that solution architect can have access to information that would enable them to be smarter at servicing their business. So one of the things that we really focus on is empowering that advisor, whether it's a solution architect, a reseller, a VAR, really with the data on that person and that profile to say businesses like you may use this phone line, this coax, this fiber, this SD-WAN. You could upgrade to this. You can then use video conferencing with this solution, and it all works together. So really, it's kind of maintaining the value add of a consultative advisor or a technical advisor, but giving them the tools to be empowered to sell smarter and help their customers achieve the objectives they need.
When we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about this because this will definitely supercharge the migration for businesses when it comes to digital transformation. I also want to bring Curtis back in too. But first, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Now, I've used Wasabi many, many times, and they're super awesome. You might be thinking, well, I use cloud storage already. The more I store in it or the more I access the data and perform operations on it, the more I get charged. Well, in this day and age, that's normally the story for most cloud storage companies, but most cloud storage providers are really kind of competing about how low they can go in fees on those ingress and egress operations. But Wasabi has the solution here. Now, from experience, I can tell you that try to go cheaper on some cloud storage systems, you give up on performance and reliability as well. Well, here's what Wasabi steps in and fixes all that stuff, from small projects all the way up to large enterprise ones. Wasabi has figured it all out. Let's start with the cost. Listen to this cost. Pricing cost is about $5.99 per terabyte per month. Super competitive in pricing. Plus, listen to the game changer. Unlimited free egress for your data. No charge for those API calls, so you don't actually have to pay to access your data. Yay, here's cheering. Now check out what you're already paying right now in cloud storage, because I can tell you that not having to include those egress fees and API calls will, and especially those CRUD operations, will actually substantially save your money and cost of doing business, of doing things. Now, I'm probably thinking, well, if they're cheaper, they must be slower, or they don't have all the bells and whistles, right? Well, Wasabi is able to tackle all those areas. They have developed some disruptive technology. They actually found ways to pull raw performance out of their storage devices without compromising any of that. They have a revolutionary process. They actually lay data on disks sequentially as opposed to blocks. Now, what happens when they do that? Well, it means that Wasabi's storage is 80% cheaper and 6 times faster in speed than some of the industry leaders. Now, are you and your organization worried about compliance? Well, Wasabi is HIPAA, FINRA, and CGIS compliant as well. And you know what? You already know this. Fast, inexpensive storage isn't worth much if your data isn't secured, right? Well, Wasabi has an answer. Wasabi offers a unique feature called immutable buckets of data that cannot be deleted or altered, which protects your valuable data from accidental and malicious destruction. Plus, they also have 90-day rotating integrity checks and 11 nines of durability. That's quite a bit. Now, moving your on-premise IT setup to the cloud solution is one of the most critical business decisions you're going to make in the near future. Now, according to industry-leading market research firm Gartner, by 2025, 80% of enterprises will shut down their traditional data center versus 10% today. Wasabi is going to help ease that transition and have you feel confident in that move to the cloud. Now, to give you more peace of mind, Wasabi was founded by industry storage legends like David Friend and Jeff Flowers. And of course, Wasabi's revolutionary technology is built from their deep experience in the space as the founders of cloud backup market leader Carbonite. We love Carbonite. Now, data storage is all Wasabi does, and they are experts in, and that's actually their passion. And they believe that in a world of rapidly escalating cloud storage needs, things only move forward if cloud storage is treated more like a utility with fast, affordable storage available in endless supply. But you want to try this right now, right? Well, go build something fun or move your data right now. They truly understand the needs of enterprises, so they don't have things like egress fees. Calculate savings for yourself and start a free trial of unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click the free trial link, and enter the code ENTERPRISE. Join the movement and migrate your data to the cloud with confidence. Go to wasabi.com and make sure you use the offer code ENTERPRISE. We thank Wasabi for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Daniel Sack, co-CEO of AppDirect, about digital transformations and providing solutions to businesses. But I do want to bring my co-host back in because he's got some pretty serious enterprise experience here. Chris, I'm going to throw it to you because I know you wanted to talk a little bit about architecture and solutions.
You know, I do. There are a couple of different questions I want to ask. And Daniel, the first one I've got to ask, when you were talking about the human element, and the importance of bringing people in organizations together with the people who could provide solutions, this sounds almost like an app store for system integrators. Is that what you're doing?
That's exactly it. So what we found is that almost every business, in order to evolve digitally, is going to want to sell their services online, potentially with third-party services, and enable them to work across channels. So AppDirect has built a subscription commerce platform that enables any business to be able to launch an app store to market and sell their products, working seamlessly with third-party products. So, subscription commerce, we think, is one of the really keys to unlocking value in the digital future. And just like every business has a CRM, we believe every business will need a subscription commerce platform to help with their digital business models. And subscription commerce includes the monetization of digital services as well as the management and engagement of their customers. What I mean by that is monetization, meaning how do I sell my product online through a website? How do I sell it through my sales channels? How do I sell it through online app stores? How do I sell it through a distribution network? And then when you're selling these services, how do you enable the customers to have unified access to all these services with one password? How do you ensure there's a unified billing? How do you ensure that they have cross-app chat and the ability to see what's going on across all those apps in unified data? And that's really what subscription commerce is all about. It's about enabling a business to be able to launch a new business model to really build their business in a digital way, selling all the products and services they need across all the channels that they want to sell them through.
Very good. Well, talking about all of those channels and all of the different models that your clients might use, the question comes up. I know we've been talking about cloud to cloud to cloud apps and applications and connectors. To what extent do you find that your customers want to also incorporate some legacy on-prem work? Do you deal at all with hybrid architectures for this, or are you a pure cloud play?
Yeah, so what we've found is that it's not realistic to go from analog to digital or offline to online just in one move. These transformations take decades. They involve tens of thousands of people in large organizations, or oftentimes everyone in a smaller organization. So what we've really done is built an open, extensible, agnostic platform that is sitting in the cloud, multi-tenant, best-in-class cloud platform. But what it enables is people to integrate and attach some of their old systems. So if you have an older billing system or you have manual workflows, you can essentially port those to our system to essentially be a stepping stone to your digital transformation. So one of the things that we observe when a business wants to go digital is they're going to say, okay, I have these 3 new products that are built in the cloud and they're SaaS-based, and that's easier. But the majority of my revenue is actually in these products that have a really traditional flow. And therefore, our objective is to create a commerce platform that makes it easier for you to transport all your revenue. So just as I said, digital transformation in our mind is defined by answering the 2 questions: what channels do you want to sell through and what products do you want to sell? We also help you map all those products, whether they're legacy on-prem or whether they're in the cloud. And we help with the migration to the cloud or with the integrations to essentially mirror a digital experience, even if they're being run on legacy systems today.
Well, one of the things that we've seen in a lot of cases recently with platforms of various sorts are people managing to, either through misconfiguration or misuse of an API, introduce vulnerabilities that the criminal elements are more than happy to exploit. Do you get a lot of questions about the security of your platform, and how do you help your customers deal with potential misconfiguration introducing vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so we think that security obviously is one of the most important things that face any enterprise technology leader, and we really have ability to secure security in many ways across the layer. So each app will have their own approach to security, and one of the things that we do is we add an extra security layer to ensure that data is secure and that access to your services are secure. And a lot of what we found is that having capabilities like multi-factor authentication is really important. But one of the biggest risks to a company's security is incorrect access to services, or the idea that there's this password overload, so people use the same password across all their apps, or share passwords or write it down on sticky notes. So often those are some of the most basic but vulnerable issues. And really what we've tried to do is, and really driven, is a way for a CIO or an IT leader to have complete visibility into who has access to what services. So when a employee leaves your company, you can instantly revoke access and decommission all their services, and you have an audit log of when they've logged into all the other services. So that added layer of security gives a lot of comfort. And we see examples of this all the time where an employee may have left. We then revoke access to the services that we're aware of, but because of shadow IT or other reasons, the employee may still have access to data, and that can act as a backdoor to security. So having all your applications and services run through a platform that can add this extra security layer and manage for that instant provisioning, and also comply with best-in-class security, whether that's PCI or GDPR, I think is very, very critical in terms of your IT strategy.
Well, I appreciate all of that discussion about the security. I think that's critical. But I have to ask, you've been talking about all that you offer in terms of security, in terms of authentication, in terms of the various services you offer through your platform. With all of that, do your users find any issues with the level of friction, and especially transactional friction that you might add? I mean, we all know that the key to UX these days is speed. People want absolutely instantaneous response to each and every click or action. Do you give them instant response, or is there a frictional cost to be paid for all of the various services you offer?
Yeah, so Curtis, that's the key question, and that's really why we started AppDirect, is that there's really too much friction and complication in using your enterprise IT. And the example that I gave of the analogy of the car is really an example of that, where you may be using 10, 20, 30 applications just for one person. And if you have to remember 10, 20, 30 different passwords and log into all these apps separately, and then you realize that your bills are off, or that you haven't had payment, or your data is not there, that creates a ton of friction. And really puts weight on your organization and yourself in order to be productive. And we want technology to work for you. We don't want you to work for technology. So really what we've done by that added security layer is we've looked at what are the key components that a user needs to use across all apps, and how do we simplify that so they just need to remember one password, pay one bill, access all their data, from one place. But still get access to best of breed applications. So we really think that we've done the best we've seen in the industry. We've been recognized, by both our customers and industry thought leaders for enabling and reducing this essentially reducing the friction and enabling the seamless experience, but also providing for that added security layer.
Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Really great discussion. Fortunately, we're running a little bit low on time, so I did want to give you an opportunity to maybe tell the folks at home where they can go and find more about AppDirect. How can they get started? How can they get in contact?
Definitely. So the best thing to do is to go to our website, appdirect.com. Look at some content, fill in what you're doing, and get connected with us. You can reach me directly at daniel@appdirect.com. And I'll make sure that we get you where you need. But one of the things that people always ask is just tell me about digital transformation. So always happy to walk you through your digital transformation journey. We also have a big team of people who can help.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you've done it again. You've sat through another hour of a Best Bang Enterprise podcast in the universe, according to 9 out of 10 Baby Yoda solutions. I need to get Baby Yoda in there somewhere. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host, our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, people love reading your stuff. Can you tell the folks at home where they can find you and all of your work?
Well, as always, they can find me at Dark Reading, and especially at the edge of Dark Reading, where my longer pieces tend to go. Would love it if people would check out. I've got some great pieces coming up over the next few days, including one on a particular executive's journey to CISSP, what it meant to them and what it was like getting there, as well as some pieces looking forward to RSA, looking at the 10 Sandbox innovation finalists who have been announced. So lots of good stuff. Would love to have both your readership and your comments. So let me know what you think. As always, I'll be posting about those on my Twitter account. That's at KG4GWA. And can't wait to hear from the Twiat Riot.
Thank you, Curtis, as always. But also we have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen, to catch up on your enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now, twit.tv/Twiat. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, show notes, co-host information, guest information, and links to the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you actually see those helpful download, and subscribe links. We help support the show by getting your audio version, video version, HD video version, and if your choice, listen on any one of your devices or any one of your podcast applications. It's really the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your friends, your family members, and your coworkers by sharing Twiat with them as well. Remember, we do this show live each and every week at 1:30 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. You can check that out at live.twit.tv. We'll get to IRC soon. Come see how the show is run. Come see the behind the scenes. Check out all of the live things, the discussions that we get into. And actually, to be part of that live discussion, got to jump into the chat room as well at irc.twit.tv. There we have some great characters. We get some great discussion topics, and people are pretty funny in there. Actually, I was laughing during the show with some of the comments in there. So come join the group, join the Twiat Riot, jump into the chat room live. Also, if you can't jump in live, can't be part of the live show, you know what? We also have a great community that continues that discussion as well. Come join the 24/7 discussion that's happening at twit.community. That's a great website. All the hosts are out there. The Twit community is out there, the Twiat Riot. We have some really great discussions about shows, about technology, just about anything. Come out there, join as well. Be part of the community 24/7 at twit.community. Also, it's time for Twit's annual audience survey, and we want to hear from you. We definitely do. It only takes about 5 minutes, so it allows us to hear directly from you. So visit twit.to/survey20. That's twit.to/survey20, and let us know what you think. There's no sign up, and we don't track you, so your feedback actually helps us make Twit even better, and we really thank you for your support. Remember, you can always follow me, twitter.com/LouMM. There I'll have all my enterprise tidbit posts, and of course conversations with people like you. And plus, I can actually post things about what I do at my normal work week here at Microsoft. And if you want to check out dev.office.com, there we post the latest and greatest ways to make your office suite more productive for you and your organization. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week, and we couldn't do This Week in Enterprise Tech without them. I also want to thank all the engineers at Twit. I also want to thank Mr. Brian Cheebert. He's still feeling under the weather. We wish him well. But you remember, he's also not only our co-host, but he also is our producer as well. He does all the show bookings, and he does all of the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do it without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your hard work and your support. And before we actually sign out, we have to thank our TD for today, Victor. Victor, in the spirit of the very good tradition that Padres started, we want to know what today's show theme was. What do you think? What'd you get out of it?
I'm not sure. I just heard Baby Yoda at the end, and over here we're over in Northern California, so we're kind of getting ready for the weekend because I think there's a game this weekend. We're all seeing red right now. So
that little game, yeah, we don't care about that game up here in Washington, but yeah,
I figured.
Thanks very.
Sorry.
You know what? You're
I'll listen
close.
next week.
All right, sounds good. You know, you're very close. I would say you're super close, but I would honestly say it's connecting your engine to your steering wheel. But maybe next time, Victor. Good try. And just remember, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.